In my humble opinion, the Sega Master System is one of the most underrated consoles of all time. Next to the ColecoVision, yes, I am that old, the Sega Master System was my very first console, and I enjoyed it much more than the NES. Blasphemy, I know. Some would even argue that the Master System was the better console than the NES. Now hear me out. But the only reason that Nintendo was more successful during the 8-bit era than Sega was because of the tight kung fu grip they had on the market at the time. Nintendo even threatened some retailers that if they sold Sega games, they would pull Nintendo carts from the store shelves. How you doing, fellow geeks? Gamer Dad 79 here, and welcome to Retro Retrospective. On Retro Retrospective, we're going to be taking a look back at some of my favorite retro games of all time and hopefully finding some hidden gems along the way. You know, thanks to the Steam Deck, retro gaming is easier than ever, and it's been so much fun to rediscover. On today's episode, we are going to be taking a look at one of my favorite Master System games of all time. I'm talking about Choplifter. So, let's get into it. Choplifter began its life in 1982 as a game developed by Dan Gorlin for the Apple II series of computers. Now, Dan Gorlin is a developer with a unique background. Some would even say that he got into game development by accident. While trying to sell his home out of sheer boredom, he wrote a game based on his love of helicopters. Now, Dan had this local kid that did odd jobs for him, and he showed him the game one day. And this kid recommended that Dan add people to pick up, like in Defender, so, people to rescue. What came out of the next 6 months of development was Choplifter. The game was then ported to the Atari 8-bit computer series, as well as the VIC-20, Commodore 64, ColecoVision, the MSX, and the Thomson series of computers later that year. After finding mild success in the home computer market, Sega then came along and ported the game to arcades in 1985. And it was that version that hit the Sega Mark III when it was released in American territories, which was then known as the Sega Master System. You play as the pilot of a Hawk Z helicopter, attempting a rescue mission of hostages held at various locations, both on sea and at land. There isn't much to the story of Choplifter, but I always envisioned myself as RAMBO from First Blood Part 2, rescuing POW'S and blowing up enemy encampments. Whoops, I think I downloaded the wrong RAMBO movie. As far as the graphics go, the game looks really colorful, and it's easy to tell what everything is supposed to be, even down to the POWs that you are rescuing. There is some flicker and slow down when there's a lot going on, but that's more due to the technical limitations of the hardware at the time. However, this is the best looking version of Choplifter outside of the arcade, and looking at this footage right here, you can see how close the Master System version of the game was to its arcade counterpart. In each site, you have up to 64 hostages that you can rescue, but your copter can only hold 15, so you have to be strategic in how you perform each rescue. You only need to save 40 of the hostages in order to make it to the next area, but I do wish you were given the option to rescue as many as you could before moving on. This way you could rack up more points for that final score. When you save 20 hostages, you gain an extra life for that level, but you always start each level with only 3 Hawk Z helicopters. When you save 20 hostages, you gain an extra life for that level, but you always start each level with only 3 Hawk Z helicopters. Lose all your copters or let 25 hostages die, and it's game over, and you have to start again. Controls in Choplifter were really unique. Dan Gorlin originally envisioned Choplifter as a 3D helicopter sim, but eventually switched to traditional 2D due to technical limitations. Original publishers Broderbund, I think I'm saying that right, also told Gorlin that the game was too realistic, and they helped him give it more of a, the arcade feel that we now know. In Choplifter, you can turn your Hawk Z from left to right, giving you a lot of options in combat. However, you could also face forward and fire into the foreground against certain enemy types. Not only can you fire on 3 different planes, but the screen also moves from left to right, with enemies coming at you from all angles. It really makes things very frantic and exciting. There are various enemy types to face off against, including tanks, boats, and other enemy aircraft. Not only that, but you have to contend with anti-aircraft missiles and more coming at you from the ground. You yourself can pose as a threat to the hostages. If you're not careful as how you land, you can either smush them or block the entrance to their holding area, leaving them to die in a blazing inferno. Choplifter was and still is one of my favorite Master System games. It's easy enough to pick up and play for small bursts at a time, but challenging enough to keep you coming back to see if you can beat that score on that level. It does have a lasting legacy, as it spawned 2 sequels, a spiritual successor called Air Raid, and an HD remake for the Xbox Live Arcade, PlayStation Network, and computers back in 2012. Choplifter also served as the inspiration for the 1996 game Black Dawn. Since 2012, there's been no further mention of Choplifter, either as a sequel, remake, remaster, but in the games industry, you just never know. Choplifter is easily available via most emulators, and you can even play it on your phone. How much more easier can you get than that? Not only that, but the HD remake is currently available as we speak as part of the new PlayStation Plus. So that's it for today's video, fellow geeks. Let me know in the comments section if you have ever played Choplifter and what you thought about it. Like and subscribe if you are new, and until next time, I'm GamerDad79. Keep on geeking on.